This is Planet 76, your source for all things Philadelphia 76ers. We've got another great episode coming your way today, and we're clear for takeoff. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 80, Michael, 80 of Planet 76. Sixers have played some pretty good ball since the turn of the calendar, so they have a record of 4-2. Most recently, though, a loss coming at the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight at the Wells Fargo Center. A very interesting game, 133 for the Thunder to 114 for the Sixers. We'll talk about that and all that the Sixers have been doing, again, since the turn of the calendar, 4-2. Tyrese Maxey is back since we last recorded. Joel Embiid has missed some time and is now back since we last recorded a full-length episode. Michael got a mini episode, 79.5 you called it, I think, for the last last week's episode. So, we're going to get into it. I will say some of this episode will be Michael giving some of an update for me. So I was away on my honeymoon, just got married New Year's Eve.
Woo!
Yes, sir. And you can see it right there. And so I was in Hawaii for 8 days, so I missed a lot of the Sixers action. So, I pretty much just saw box scores of the most recent games, watched tonight's game, and then the game against Detroit previously where the Sixers put up 147. So, Michael, since the turn of the calendar, since that's kind of can be the theme of this episode, what have you seen from the Sixers?
Well, they've looked good is what I'll say. Tyrese Maxey is back, like you said. It took him a few games to adjust.
Okay.
To readjust after being out a month.
Yeah.
Plus 6 weeks.
Easily.
So
yeah.
It's gonna take some time, and I think in that Chicago game is when he really started looking better, and then the first Detroit game he looked really good. I think he was probably like 90% of what he was before he got injured. Win against New Orleans, win against the Pacers. That New Orleans game that was the second half of that New Orleans series.
Right.
The Pelicans stomped the Sixers in the first game. Absolutely destroyed.
And that was New Year's Eve, I think, right?
That was the
30th.
That was when was that? I don't know, but New Year's Eve was they played the Thunder.
Oh, yeah. So it might have been the one before that, yeah.
I think it was Friday. It was they were in New Orleans. They were in Oklahoma City. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. They were in New Orleans. They were in Oklahoma City. New Orleans came here
on Monday.
And then they beat them.
Yeah.
Yeah, last Monday. But the Sixers, they've looked good. I'm not going to say they've looked great. But with Maxey, Embiid, and Harden back, I would say things are trending upward.
Mm-hmm.
Because Embiid, and he did sit out a few games to rest, but for the most part, the Sixers are back. They're not dealing with any real injuries. They're not dealing with any real long-term missing time from any players. So I would say that at the very least they're trending upward. They still have their issues. There's still some question marks with the bench. With Glenn, obviously that's a given. That shouldn't even need to be mentioned. But but I'd say they're trending upward, and they win. They in the past few stretches of games they've beaten teams they're supposed to beat. The Pacers, the Pistons twice, absolutely stomped the Pistons twice.
Yeah,
that second game was an understatement.
Crazy.
I watched all but the. Oh, that's a lie. I didn't watch the second Detroit game. but either way, that first Detroit game, the score was 123-111, but
could have been worse.
The Sixers, yeah, it seemed like such a not close game because the Sixers just absolutely stomped them with no Embiid. I don't think Tucker played that game either. Huh. So, yeah, I would say the Sixers are trending on. I would say I'm comfortable saying that they're trending upward right now.
Okay. Well, and that's good news and a good thing to hear. One, I think the first and foremost reason that you can say that and we can feel good about that is, think about it. We're probably approaching the most time during the season where James, Joel, and Tyrese have been on the floor together, which is crazy because today we hit the half point of the season, 41 games into the regular season. So we're officially halfway through, which is insane to think about. But like those guys, because Joel was injured early a little bit, James Harden was out for a long time. Then James Harden comes back. Tyrese Maxey's still out. He just got back. Toward the end of 2022, those last couple games there, maybe last game. So this is like the most time that they've spent together on the floor this season, and so that's a cool thing to think. Okay, our guys are back, and we're actually looking good. That's a trend in the right direction. I'd be a little concerned if you're saying, oh, they're kind of trending downward, and yet the guys they want on the floor are on the floor.
You hit it right. It's the Sixers. Every team needs their entire team to win, because you're not at your best when you don't have all your players, especially in the Sixers case when they didn't have all three of their best players for a month plus. So having that, not only is it basically a requirement to actually evaluate the team and what they are and what they can be, but also something that needs to happen if they're going to win consistently and win in the playoffs. They need cohesion early in the season to get things going and to be able to get a sample size of, okay, this is the Sixers with everyone playing. Mm-hmm. Here's what they look like. Here's what we can see. Here's what needs to be fixed. Here's some question marks. Right. And we're now, like you just said, we're now just getting that. January, whatever today is, the 11th. We're now just getting that. So, not that it's an issue, but now I think is really the time where we can look at the Sixers and see them at face value. Okay, this is the Sixers. Everyone's healthy. Everyone's playing fine. Nobody's injured. No one's getting traded. No one is being signed right now. And for the trade deadline is not for another month or so. So now, in the next month, 5-6 weeks, this is the time where we can really say, okay, the Sixers have to now prove themselves. Everyone's healthy. Now is the time for them to really lock in, to really win games, and to really gel. And gel is, you can look at it in a bunch of different ways, but gel when it comes to playing together and building chemistry and and playing to the potential of what this team is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think, again, alluding to the fact that these three guys are back, the rest of the team is healthy for the most part. I mean, it's now's the time. And I think it's even something you alluded to a couple weeks ago, even like we're now seeing what the Sixers can be. Because before we really hadn't, because of all the injuries, because of all the issues. It was just one thing after another. It seemed like every guy on the team had a foot issue. It was insane for a while there. And now we're at the halfway point, and I don't want to put a number on it necessarily, but I think the next 41 games, it's important for James, Tyrese, Tobias even, and Joel to be on the floor a lot together. I don't want to throw a number on it, but hopefully a lot of these games, these guys are working together and getting their chemistry down, their timing down, whatever it needs to look like, getting just everything down, and locking in for what's going to be hopefully a good playoff run for the team. So, I will throw some numbers your way. So, on the 10th, whatever day that was Tuesday. Tuesday the 10th, Sixers did win 147-116. This again, the second game against Detroit. Their last three quarters were incredible. So I watched the majority of that one. In the first quarter, I think it was like a 7-point game. It was like, okay, Detroit might hang around. And it's like, nope. So they scored 38, 42, and 40 in the second, third, and fourth quarters. They shot 60% from the floor. Just incredible stuff. And then Embiid in that one did something that has literally never been done in the history of basketball, which is pretty cool. So he's put up 36 and 11 boards, but he only took 24 minutes to do so. And that's the fewest minutes by any player ever to record 35 and 10 in a game since the NBA began tracking minutes played back in 1951. So
Actually, I didn't even know that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
there's a lot of NBA games that have been played since then, and he's the first one to do that. James Harden also did some things that I wouldn't imagine have been done very often. I don't know if it was the only time, but he had 16 points, 15 assists, and 12 rebounds, and he only played 26 minutes in that game. So, I mean, I don't think that happens very often either. Just a very efficient offensive game for the Sixers in that one. But then tonight's game against the Thunder, to chat about that for just a moment, I mean, it was very back and forth. So at one point, to kind of tell the tale of what the game consisted of, Sixers were down, I think, 10 at halftime. I missed the first 3 or 4 minutes of the third quarter, and the Sixers were up by 3. Just like that. Like 13-point difference in 3 or 4 minutes. And then Oklahoma City went on a huge run. And then the Sixers went on a huge run. And then Oklahoma City went on a huge run. So Sixers did have a chance. They cut it to, I think, 6 or 7 with 5 minutes left. But then Oklahoma City just kept making shots. They shot over 50% from the floor, over 40% from 3, and over 90% from the free throw line. So a 50-40-90 game for the Thunder tonight at the Wells Fargo Center.
That is insane.
Yeah. So I for the outline today, you might have noticed I piggybacked on one of your posts on Trust the Love, talking about a resurgent James Harden. So James Harden, and then I want to have you tell me, because again I've missed a lot of January, how he's been able to have this success. So in the month of January, in this 6 games, he's been averaging 21.2 points, 10.6 assists, and 7.6 rebounds. His last 2 games, he has 30 assists, and the 2 games before that, he had 11 and 11 assists. So, yeah, I mean, it's your words, not mine. So why would you say a resurgent James Harden? I guess really since the turn of the calendar.
Yeah, and I would say turn of the calendar, but I would also say this season, because a lot of people wrote him off as, oh well, he's not the player he used to be, and that's a pretty vague generalization, because even though people say that and reference him from Houston, he's still doing a lot of that, and his playmaking has been amplified, his passing has been amplified, because he's always been able to do that. And we're seeing glimpses of who he was in Brooklyn and even a little bit of Houston. We're seeing the assists, we're seeing efficient scoring, not crazy efficient scoring, but he's still scoring very well. He's shooting, at least from 3, and especially in the past few games, he's shooting better than he has in recent years for the most part. I think this is he's so far tied his career high 3-point percentage, 38%. Yeah, well, not quite, but he's also taking the most threes he's taken in 4 years. He's making the most threes. He's making the most threes in the past 4 per game in the past 4 years. So when it comes to his abilities in terms of his offense, obviously he's not going to be scoring 60 points per game. But something that we all wanted to see is him balancing that scoring with that playmaking. He's not giving you 30, but he's giving you 23, 24 with 15 assists.
Yeah,
regularly, might I add, regularly, not just a game here and there, but a few times per week, a few games per week he's doing this, and it's not only easy because he's playing alongside one of the most dominant players ever, but also it's just the roster. Like, we talked about roster conjunction a lot, but a guy like James Harden playing with shooters, we saw it in Houston too, he's able to replicate some of that. He's able to replicate some of that shot creation because of the roster that's around him. You have shooting, D'Anthony Melton, Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, all guys that catch and shoot, get the ball and go kind of thing. He's there to make those guys, to help those guys out, because there's only maybe 3 or 4 guys that can make the passes that he makes and create shots for others that he does. Like, there's only a few guys that can do these things, and we're seeing some of that come back. Not at full scale, like I said, we're seeing glimpses of it, but we're seeing him kind of climb his way back into, I'm still a really amazing offensive player. I might not be the best offensive player in the league, but I'm still scoring pretty well. I'm still passing the ball very well. I'm still creating a lot of shots for my teammates, and that's what he did in Houston. Again, I really want to emphasize, not to that scale, obviously, but he's still doing it in shades, and we're still seeing some of that. We're still seeing a little bit of what he's done in Houston and even in Brooklyn, because let's not forget, he was getting MVP talks December of 21. He was the Nets' best player. December of 21. He was the Nets' best player. He was scoring at will, basically. He was making life easier for everybody on that roster. That's the James Harden that we're seeing right now, and I think that's maybe not the best version of James Harden, but I think that's an equally as impactful version of James Harden, because he's combining what he does with what he can do for other players, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for me, it's been something you talked about quite a bit there, and it's all good, but for me, it's the passing that he's put on display. He just, again, to your point, the team around him, he just looks very, very comfortable. And so while you were talking, I was like, because you mentioned, it's not like he's getting 15 assists just once every blue moon. So while you were talking, I was like, let me count. So James Harden's played 25 games so far of the 41 Sixers games, and in 10 of those games, he has had 12 assists or more.
I'm saying.
So 25 games, and he's had 12 or more. He's had a bunch more with 11 or 10. But, I mean, you get over 12 assists 10 times through 25 games, that's 40%. 40% of the time James Harden gets 12 assists or more. That's crazy to think about.
Leading the league in assists,
so he looks extremely
something he
comfortable.
hasn't done in 7 years since his before his MVP season, when he averaged 11.2. He's averaging 11 right
Really?
now. He could average 13 assists this year, and
he averaged 11.3 7 years ago.
Yeah, in 2016-2017 season, he averaged 11.2 assists per game. He's averaging 11 right now, and I think he could average 12, 13, really.
Certainly. He just looks comfortable. And there was a pass he had today against the Thunder that was pretty incredible. It was so nonchalant, like a fast break kind of thing, and they had 3 guys on Maxey kind of getting back, and he threw a bounce pass right in between them all, and Maxey scored.
That's the thing, it was crazy. 90% of the league can't make that pass. 90% of the league doesn't even see that pass. They can't make it. They can't see it, so they can't make it. But Harden, his vision, sometimes he just creates passing lanes out of thin air because he's so good at finding gaps. He understands his teammates' strengths, where his teammates like to be, what they like to do, where they like to go. That's so important.
Yeah.
And Harden has been that his whole career, but like we're seeing it again.
Right. Resurgent James Harden. Incredible stuff. So I got a couple more things, and then we can kind of talk about where the Sixers sit in the East and the West Coast road trip that they are about to embark on. So the one thing I wanted to ask you, again, just because I've missed some action lately, and I've been box score watching a little bit and able to catch some of the action or highlights or whatever, but I am back now. But so one thing that has been certainly a big debate is the backup center position. Paul Reed, Montrezl Harrell. I know Montrezl went off against, was it the Pacers?
Yes, and then he had 2 great games against the Pistons, too.
He had 2 good games against the Pistons. So, with that being said, Where do you now? Today's game, they both got some action. Paul Reed and Montrez. Paul Reed had quite a few fouls. He didn't impress me much tonight. Some hustle plays. Montrez got a couple, or at least one real easy bucket, just because he's Montrezl Harrell. Where do you stand, or based on what you've seen lately, on that debate? Is it a debate? Can they both play, or does there need to be someone that's like, okay, this is the backup big man? Does it need to be that, or can it be what it's been?
In my opinion, I think the Sixers need to go with one guy.
Okay.
But right now it seems like it's really matchup dependent. At least that's what I'm chalking it up to, because sometimes Glenn is inconsistent with that. He'll play Paul Reed in a not so favorable matchup defensively or offensively. But then he'll play Montrezl Harrell in a favorable matchup, and then the opposite will happen. So I'm chalking it up to it's matchup dependent right now. I don't think the coaching staff has a definitive, this guy's our backup center, because we've seen Montrezl Harrell be that guy. We've seen Paul Reed be that guy in stretches this year, and more recently Montrezl Harrell. So I'm just guessing that he's the backup center right now, and I don't particularly agree, because I think Paul Reed's better. I talked about that on my page too. I just think Paul Reed's a better basketball player. I think he's a better fit, especially defensively. I think he's a bit better. It's not a requirement for a backup center, but I think he's a little better at creating his own shot, even though Montrezl Harrell has a little 10, 12-foot mid-range jumper that he gets to sometimes. But I think Paul Reed's a little better at getting his own shot. I think Paul Reed can put the ball on the floor, get to the rim a little bit. And again, that's not a requirement of centers, especially backup centers. But all that plays into, I just think Paul Reed's better. I think he's a better fit. I think he's a better player. And I'm not going to sit here and say Montrezl Harrell is not good, because he also is a great fit for the Sixers. Very different styles of play. They're very different players, and that I would like to think is why Glenn and the coaching staff is having a hard time with sticking with one guy and just running with them. That, and
that's
it
exactly
being
what I was going to say. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And so potentially, even though Glenn and the staff aren't in agreement with what you would desire, right now, the potentially at least, glass half full kind of guys like we on Planet 76 are, the potentially good thing is that they are such different players. And if it is situational, if it is about matchups, if it is about defense or offense or a spark on either end, it's a no-brainer as to who you put in given whatever the situation may be. That is the one positive about that. It is, as a fan, again, we're only halfway through the season, but I if I had to choose, if I would rather, this is the definite backup versus, do all situational, I think I'd have to side a little bit, not quite as far as where you are, but a little bit toward your side, saying, let's go with the backup and go with it. Because as a fan, you see a guy like Montrezl Harrell who went off in 3 games off the bench, 19, 17, and 20. Or maybe he started. Did he start those games when Joel was out?
Yeah.
He started. So
actually, I think,
either way,
honestly,
19, 17,
I think
20.
PJ Tucker may have started. He did in the Pacers
game.
I will say that. I remember that.
Okay. So, and he was extremely efficient from the field. Then the game against Detroit 2 nights ago, he shot 100% from the field, only 3. And then tonight against the Thunder, he has 7 minutes played. As a fan, it's like, if that guy's playing well, keep playing him. And then, so that's the one downside. As a fan, you're like, at least you can expect what to see on the floor. But with this situation, you can't. There's no talent. There's no telling who's going to get more minutes at the center position as a backup right now. So that's what I'll say about that. So there's a log jam as again we sit at the halfway point of the season. Eastern Conference standings are a little wild. So the 2 through 5 seeds in the East currently are only separated by. Let me see. Only separated by like 2 games, I believe. Yeah. So the Nets, the Bucks, the Cavs, and the Sixers are separated all by 2 games, and then the Celtics are 3 games ahead of that. So the Sixers are 4 back in the loss column of the Boston Celtics. But yeah, I mean, those have been the top 5 teams in the Eastern Conference so far. Those 5. But we'll see how it all shakes out. Nets are still playing really good ball. Kevin Durant has been playing good ball. At least that's what I've heard. Is he still going off?
Yeah, he's injured.
Before I was.
He's out for 2 weeks.
Shoot!
He got.
I missed that.
They played the Heat the other night, and Jimmy Butler fell kind of awkwardly on him, and I forget the exact injury, but a lot of people were saying this kind of injury, most players will be out like a month. But apparently Kevin Durant is the way. I don't exactly know the full breakdown, but apparently the way it ended with KD is that he won't be out a month and then he'll be back in a few weeks. But still, that's going to hurt for the Nets and the Sixers.
Yes, it will. He was having
an amazing season. He was awesome. And the Sixers need to take advantage of the Nets possibly tanking in the standings and win all 5 of these games because...
Ooh, hot take.
No, I mean, yeah, but no, because they need to win these games.
I would love to see it.
You know what I'm saying? The Lakers are... the Lakers are controversial right now. I'm not here to talk about the Lakers, but what I will say is I think the Lakers are a good team. Clippers are a great team, too. But this is the kind of stretch of games where you prove yourself. It's a West Coast trip against 1, 2, if you believe in the Kings, 3 really good teams. So the Sixers need to do everything in their power to win these games. Embiid needs to play all 5 games. And I don't even want to say not even against the Jazz, maybe, because not that the Jazz are good, but they can surprise you. They almost beat the Sixers back in November when Embiid had that crazy game, which is still mind-boggling. But
yes.
So
yep, and they're much better at home than on the road. 13-7 at home, 8-16 away.
Yeah, that's
the Jazz.
And this is a good opportunity to improve their road record too. Winning on the road is huge. If we haven't become aware of that now, then we will be. But winning on the road is huge. Sixers need to win all 5 games. Not that they even should. They need to, in my opinion. Because for the sake of them getting a higher seed, potentially, them creating more separation from the Cavs, who I believe are still 5th, right? And them just... the cohesion we're talking about. This team is fully healthy. Let's play like it. Let's rise to the standards of what everyone thinks we are and what we're supposed to be, which is a championship contender. That's something we've been talking about all season. This is the kind of stretch of games where you can, the Sixers, this is the kind of team that can win some games in the playoffs and,
let's go.
Not jinx anything, but make it past the second round.
Okay, all right. No, you got me fired up a little bit with that. I like it, and there's a lot of truth to what you just said. One, because I think this 5-game road trip, and you can correct me, or if you disagree, I think this 5-game road trip is coming at a very good time for the Sixers, given their health, given just again where they've been trending, given where James Harden is, given again that we're going on a West Coast road trip for 5 games, and Tyrese Maxey's not sitting at home like he used to be. And James Harden's not sitting at home. Like, this is a healthy team where their stars are healthy, and these are winnable games. It would be really, really cool to go have success out west. Again, 5 games: Jazz, Lakers, Clippers, Trailblazers, and Kings. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a good test for them. The Trailblazers are good too. I think they're just above 500, a few games above 500, but they're a good team. I like Dame. They have some very quality players. So that's no walk in the park either, in my opinion. They all 5 of these teams can easily beat the Sixers. To varying levels, obviously, because some teams are better than others. But this is going to be a good test for the legitimacy of this Sixers team.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. I'll end with a question for you, and then we'll wrap it up. So my question is this. So given all, again, we're at the halfway point. Let's do some halfway point things. Given all the Sixers have been through, if I would have told you that, Tyrese Maxey's going to miss however long he missed, a month. If I would have told you James Harden's going to miss 16 of the 41 games. If I would have told you Joel Embiid's going to miss significant time. If I would have told you every guy on the team was going to have a foot injury. If I would have told you, that they started with, who did they lose to at the beginning of the season? They lost to the Spurs.
Pacers.
They lost to they lost to the Spurs early. They lost to the Raptors early. They lost to the Wizards early. They lost to the Knicks early. If I'd have told you all of that, and then I told you that, I had a crystal ball beginning of the season, I'm doing this, and then I told you that at the midway point, Sixers would be on pace for 50 wins, because right now they're at 25 at the halfway point. Would you have believed me?
Yes, I would have believed you, because at that point it was, game 10, game 11, right? So...
Right, but I mean, just given all the injuries, too, if I'd have told you that Tyrese would have missed all that time.
True. I forgot the injuries part, but... Even then,
Okay, then let me rephrase. So why are the Sixers on pace for 50 at this point in the season, given all of that stuff?
Well, the 8-game win streak helped.
Is it?
But still, they.
Is it roster construction, what we talked about all offseason, about the new depth of this team and their ability to stay afloat?
Well, I would say partially because there have been
to.
times where they've been kind of underwhelming, at least the past couple games. And there's been
Sure.
a handful of stretch games this season where the bench is just wasn't very good. And Embiid had to do a lot of the work. Harden had to do a lot of the work. In fact, I think there were a few games last week, and maybe even that Pelicans game, where Embiid and Harden had to do about 80%. And they won, but because Harden and Embiid just put up master feats of scoring and playmaking and all that stuff, and the bench. What I will say, here's what I'll say about the bench. When the bench shows up, you can tell, not just in the scoring column. If you're watching the game, you can say these guys are rolling tonight. Whether it be defensively, whether it be rebounding, stuff like that, just energy. So there have been a few select times this season so far where you can say, the bench looks really good, and that's how good the bench can be in those moments, because they can be very good.
Right.
Like we're talking about it. They have there's talent on this bench for the Sixers. This is a talented, deep squad, but it just comes down to consistency, and that's something that we haven't seen from the Sixers that we need to see, that I need to see at least too, before I'm really 100% convinced and confident in them.
Yeah. Well said. Joel Embiid, though. I'll end with this. I've said I'll end with this like 3 times, but I'll end with this for real. Joel Embiid, his last 8 games played, he has been over 30 points 7 of those 8 games.
Joel Embiid is
it's
real.
Incredible. It's you turn on a game and you're at this point you're expecting 35-40 a night. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Joel Embiid would literally, you put him in the 70s, he's literally destroying everybody. You put him in any era of the game, he's...
Yeah, right. I mean, we talked about it. He just did something that's never been done since it's been tracked since 1951. I don't know how many basketball games have been played since then, but it's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a few. So, yeah. All right. That is a wrap for real this time on Planet 76, episode 80. Tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram, Planet 76 Podcast. Give us a shout on there. Hit up Michael
Yes.
on Trust the Love. Tell us how you feel about the newest episode, the latest content. And, we'll keep this train rolling. We'll see you in a few days next week for episode 81, and we'll talk about where the Sixers are at in that West Coast road trip. We'll see you next time. Peace. If you are a Philadelphia 76ers fan, this is the podcast for you. Planet 76, a weekly podcast covering all things Philadelphia 76ers. We'll see you next time.